from New York and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Bomani Jones, ESPN Zone on the program. I've been waiting for this, man.
What's going on, man? I feel like the police dressed up for work and everybody else here just in here chilling.
Now you look like the feds.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's cool.
But you have a television job. And by the way, your show, High Noon, shout out to Pablo, it is shot beautifully. Like, what is different about the way the show is shot?
They shoot it in 24 frames per second rather than 60, so you kind of get that movie, sort of feel. It kind of dulls it out. So if you're looking at things in the front, they're kind of fuzzy in the back. Like, they got real artistic with it.
It is pretty cool. You notice
shots.
it right away that your show looks different than other shows.
Yeah, that's the one thing we got, if nothing else. Like, hopefully they'll
Wait,
listen.
he came up here for ESPN promo? I thought we was going to get in some talk. Or are you just getting this out the way early? What are we doing?
Do both two things at one time.
People like to let them know
promote
that
their new shows.
It's a new TV show.
I'm just checking, because you work at ESPN, he works at ESPN.
Well, yeah, but this isn't some sort of planned operation.
I was just wondering, man. I get paranoid.
So what do you think's happening here?
I don't know. You guys are doing some ESPN promo.
I'll say this, no disrespect, but I ain't wake up this early just to come hang out with y'all. I don't know if I came to promo ESPN, but I sure said I came to promo me.
Yo, speaking of promoting you, your podcast also ringing off out here.
Yeah, the right time.
Yeah. You've had a lot of interesting guests recently. And I thought, I don't really get to see you a lot on ESPN, but I've been a fan, like a real fan of the things you talk about, not only on your podcast, but on social media.
No, I appreciate that.
I know things got, kind of crazy with Jamel and her talking about Trump and race issues on ESPN or on her social media. Did any of that fall into your lap during that time?
I mean, I've been catching hell for so long before that happened that I don't know if anything changed for me specifically when that happened. I did personally, though, fall back a little bit off social media stuff, not because of that, but because I was looking around and I was like, I don't know how helpful I'm being right now in this. Because I feel like after the election, I used to be able to give people like insights and be like, hey, maybe you hadn't thought about this way. Then I looked around, man, the answers are obvious now. Like, no matter what it is that we're talking about, the answers are obvious.
And now you're just fighting with trolls for no reason.
Right. I couldn't tell if people were people anymore. Like, when you start looking in and you
Those
check.
bots, Russians.
Right.
Russian bots. St. Petersburg.
Yeah, and then the people, that are just on these boards, and then they just I can see it happen now every now and then. I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk about something serious right fast, and I give it about 10, 12 minutes, and then it is coordinated, and it descends, and it all comes in, and I'm like, oh, okay, these ain't even really people. Like, I'm not interacting with people anymore. And the point of it before was to interact.
Right.
So it's less about I might get in trouble as opposed to
this is stupid now.
I'm not just talking for the sake of saying that I said something. That ain't gonna get you nowhere.
Right. I remember the time when I was kind of like, damn, Bo seems in the weeds at this point. Like, now it started to seem like I was like, all it is people coming for him constantly. And also, you have platforms where you can talk about things in a way where you don't have to engage with people who, frankly, my biggest problem with social media is, everyone deserves a voice.
No, they
don't.
No,
not
they
really.
Don't.
No, you don't.
I don't know. Whoever came up with that idea that everybody deserves to be heard, that's ridiculous. I suppose you deserve to talk, but I don't have to listen to you.
Right. I'm so glad to hear you guys say that. I thought I was on my own out here.
No. You earned, Bomani, you earned through working your ass off throughout an entire radio career the platform to have your voice heard.
Well, even more so, I was going to bring up, your accolades scholastically, which I think are very impressive because you are not only a funny person, an insightful person, but an informed person, and an educated person.
And see, that's my thing is I think overall in this game, especially now, I do get the idea that people feel like they feel compelled to talk about certain things. They feel like they got to get out there because the time is now, right? Everybody wants. And social media does have a way of making people feel like they're doing something, whether they're doing it or not. But it feels like you really making a move and you go in there. But in the end, man, I did a lot of reading and studying up to be able to talk about these things. Like, I want to talk about it is, around your friends, cool. That is an adequate reason to talk about stuff.
So I'm sure your dinner table and holidays were interesting with a mom who's an economist and a dad who's a political scientist. You graduated from Clark in economics.
Clark Atlanta, just to be clear.
Yeah, Clark Atlanta.
What's the other Clark?
Yeah,
Everyone
I didn't know
says
there
Clark
was
Atlanta.
The other, Stu Gotts went to the other Clark. That should tell you everything you need to know. It's somewhere up here.
Yeah, that's no. So it's not Clark
nobody knows what that is. You got a master's in politics, economics, and business.
Yeah, it's all the same one though.
And you also have a master's in economics from UNC Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And you started a doctorate program in economics as well.
Yeah.
So you out here learning, my G.
Yeah. I did a little bit of that. I tell you this though about the dinner table.
Super learning.
The dinner table was informative, but the big thing is like we're fun. Like my dad is as much fun about this stuff as possible.
Right.
Like one thing I didn't realize, like kind of growing up, is like you watch TV and you see like the picture of the nerd, right? And so if you're like the smart kid growing up, that's basically the lane that you got, right? And so I was like, okay, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be. Little did I know that my pops was actually the nerd, except also like the coolest dude in the room at the same time.
Dope.
Like when I got old enough to realize, like, whoa, this dude is bad. Like he's your pops. You don't think about it in that. Like when I got up old enough to realize, like, no, they are something serious and they still out here, like, you know, chilling and living. It was like, oh, okay, now I see how it is that you're supposed to do this.
So because of all of this, you know, education that you have, your pursuit of media and, you know, sports, how did that happen?
I started freelancing about music mostly when I was in college. I was 19. I started doing that. And then after I graduated college, I was like, well, the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go to graduate school in economics. I know that. And 3 weeks later, I was in a graduate program in economics, right? Because I didn't have a job. Like I didn't have anything going. And so I was always doing the writing. But as I went farther academically, I did a lot more writing. Like that was where my head was at. And I got to Chapel Hill. And when the program turned out to be a whole lot of math and maximizing equations, I did not realize that's what I was signing up for. And I gave them plenty of reasons for them to tell me, you know what? You might be better served following your dreams.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then just went from there.
And so, what was the first gig? In like at least radio.
Oh, radio. My first radio gig, I did a Saturday morning sports show. Started in 2008.
In North Carolina?
In North Carolina. And so we started doing that, and then I went from there and I pulled that onto a midday show to go with the weekend show. So I did that for a year and a half.
Wait,
and,
in 2008?
yeah.
So when I had you on my radio show in
I
like
was just writing back
2005,
then.
you were just a writer?
I was just writing back then. I kind of
Wow, you guys have known each other that long.
Yeah, man.
I had him on my talk show.
Sports, when you were
Before
doing
I was
sports.
fired, before I came here.
Right.
So what do you know what our subject was?
It was Reddick.
It was Reddick.
It was Reddick. You did the Duke video.
Right.
And I
So-
had written something about Reddick right around it. And I think that thing I wrote about Reddick was like the first time the people at ESPN were like, hey, maybe we ought to, think about keeping this guy around here. Because I was freelancing at that point. And so, yeah, after that I did radio. I went and did a fill-in with some people on radio. And I'll never forget the producer looked at me and was like, so how long you been doing this? I was like, no, it's my first time doing this. And the look on his face, like he couldn't believe that was the first time. I was like, nah, man, I've been talking for 10, 12 minutes at a time my whole life. I've been waiting. I've been preparing for this day longer than I realized, So then got in there, then they fired me. Well, they sold the station and then new people didn't hire me. And then I started working for a station in Canada. And then they went out of business. I have a bad knack of making people go out of business upon my arrival.
Well, so far ESPN is doing fine.
Yeah, they have kept the doors open. I'm glad I haven't
The lights
been,
are still on.
Yeah, I haven't been able to take that one down.
Now
Yeah.
listen, if the way things are going, you and I both might need to start UFC shows, but things are still going well.
Yeah.
So wait, so then you're freelancing for ESPN, popping up on different radio jobs. But you're starting to gain traction, and notoriety.
Yeah.
And then when did ESPN bring you on full time?
2013. Because I started doing like around the horn and stuff in 2010.
Got it.
And I kind of
I think that's where I saw you first.
Yeah, I elbowed my way in on that one. Like, I remember the first time I did it, I was like, okay, so I could look at this like, I hope they call me back, or I could look at this like they're never going to call me back, so we might as well max this thing out. I went with B, and then they called me back the second time, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to order me a championship belt. It costs like $200. If I win on around the horn, they keep me around, and that's going to wind up being my thing. And so I did that. And so, like, for those first 2.5 years.
You invested.
Yeah.
$200. You
Yeah.
said, I'm going to get this belt.
I put it on my LLC, though. It was a legitimate business
There you
expense.
go. By the way, we call them titles in the WWE. Okay, it's not. Was it a WWE one?
It was the Ric Flair joint.
Got it. The classic. 30 pounds of
I
gold.
apologize for not using the technical
okay.
specifications of all your wrestling stuff. my bad.
Right, all right.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah, no. So I was just like, look, I'm here now. I might as well do it. And then that worked. And so once that worked, it was like, I have absolutely no reason to change this. How I'm going to go about this. This is it. I've somehow convinced them to let me do what I want to do, and they actually think this is cool. And I just wrote it out.
Now,
And so leaving Dan Lebatard's show to do this, you guys have become, I'm sure, really close. How long were you on that
4
show?
years.
Yeah, and Miami, you had called home for how long? The same
Yeah, I was
amount
there
of
for
time
4 years.
for that show.
I had never been to Miami before I went to do that show. Never been there. And that's a hell of a place to move to if you have never been
it's
here
a lot,
at
right?
all. It was cool, like me and Dan, it was an interesting process as it went, though, because we didn't really know each other like that when we first started doing it. Neither one of us had really been in a situation of working with another person as a peer for a while, And look, that show had his name on it. That man took his name off the marquee to make room for me to come in there and do that. Like, no, he did not. I don't work there if he doesn't call them at some point and be like, hey, I want you to hire this guy. Like that.
So
that's
Dan
the reason.
looked out.
Dan looked out in an amazing way. But even if you look out, and even if you appreciate somebody looking out, you got to figure out how to actually like deal and get along and stuff. You know,
right.
You know, and it was never bad, but we had it was a process in figuring that out. But no, I couldn't say at this point that anybody's been more helpful to me in trying to get things done in this than he had.
Now, you mentioned the article for Reddick was why we first talked. That was probably about as passionate as I've ever been about hating a Duke player.
And
was
where are
JJ
you
Redick.
at now with Duke?
And right now, what I just realized was, I believe everyone in some way has some sort of racial bias, but I believe that I now am the least racist person in America, as I love someone who wears Duke blue as much as I love Zion Williamson.
You're on this wagon now too.
To me, I've never watched.
I don't know if this is a safe place for you to say you're the least racist person.
Well, then when I say
because the most amazing basketball player we've seen out of college.
The joke of it is that the race is Duke blue. It's not an actual race, so I don't.
Oh, got it.
It's just Duke blue. But I did have a moment where I was like, yo, I really can't believe I don't notice what jersey he's wearing. I really don't notice.
Dude, my dad hit me this weekend, was like, I think I'm rooting for Duke for the first time. And I'm like, easy there, buddy.
See?
I think you can appreciate the athletic brilliance of this one man without like
rooting for the team.
Yeah, just throwing your scruples out the window.
Well, I posted I said on the air the other day that I believe this moment is more exciting, is a bigger deal, and is better play than Michael Jordan was in college. Not that he'll go on to have Michael Jordan's career. And
go ahead.
Kevin Durant jumped in the comments and said, "Y'all need to chill." What is the way you assess the Zion Williamson phenomenon?
Well, I think the thing was they told us before he got there that he wasn't even the best player on the team. And for a lot of people, they'd seen like the YouTube and Instagram. And it was him dunking, and it was always like these 5'9" little white dudes that were on the court. And so you had real questions about like, what exactly is this? And then he showed up, and I was like, I'm one that's like, I'm Mr. Hey, slow down. Let's just see how it goes. And I held out on that for as long as I could. And then it became impossible. Right. Like it's just like this is like next level Charles Barkley, right? Like we got all these different people that we try to list as a comparison, and it's all next level. And he seems like a nice enough kid. He doesn't. Duke. The problem with Duke, it wasn't that they had white dudes; it's that the white dudes they had were jerks, and the black dudes they had were very often jerks too.
Right.
But it kind of got lost in the fact that the white dudes were such gigantic.
And there
jerks.
was this elitist halo that even hung around the black kids that went to the school. They were all like,
It was everybody.
They were all just very bourgeoisie Negro.
Yeah, Grant Hill exception. Basically, you thought of everyone as kind of being a jerk.
Grant Hill's a cool dude. Bourgeoisie Negro, though.
Yeah.
Like, I love Grant Hill. But he knows he's...
But he wasn't a jerk.
No,
he
he's
didn't
not
play
a
like
jerk.
a jerk.
Not a
And
jerk.
then they had others like Corey Maggette would not quite fit that paradigm,
Right.
but kind of. Elton Brand wouldn't fit it. Carrawell, like even a guy like Carrawell who doesn't fit it, but he is still like a dude who went to private school. Like,
Right.
they absolutely did seem to kind of have a type, at least from a distance. The older teams, though, like people get on Bobby Hurley about that stuff. Man, Bobby Hurley's dad's a probation officer in Jersey City. Christian Laettner is much more like the guys on UNLV than like in terms of upbringing.
When it comes down to it. But
like,
the mystique, the halo, that's what I said.
It's the announcers, man. Is that, you give the announcers a team full of white dudes, and then all the cliches and everything come out. And if you got any kind of ear for it, then you're like, no, man, I'm not with this. Like
The
I
hard
can't be
work.
Right.
These are just scrappy.
Right. And they were consistently on the wrong side of history, right? They're on the wrong side of the Fab Five. They're on the wrong side of UNLV. They were always on the other side of the teams that people like me were inclined to like.
That's a really great way of putting it.
That's a bad way to put it.
And then Christian Laettner was Christian Laettner, and there you have it.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this so fascinating is I'm sitting there in real time watching my Dallas Cowboys, my Boston Red Sox, my New York Yankees, the team that I hate the most, and I'm pumping my fist in joy at this guy.
But this isn't about Duke. This is about Zion.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Duke is like is the co-star.
But that's what's so fascinating. Like to see I'm trying to recall, to me, when I was going back, was the last time, I thought Shaq was the last time that there was this level of like, yo, you just got to see this kid play in college.
No, in college.
LeBron didn't play.
LeBron didn't play.
The high school moment was cool, but this is different.
Let me think. Is Shaq the last one, right? Because you get guys that, like, we forget about it as time has gone on about what they were. Like, Glenn Robinson was one of those dudes that was just like, this
Glenn
isn't
was
great.
close.
Right, but Glenn was not athletically great. Glenn looked like he was 45 years old.
He
when was
played
20.
lights out.
Exactly.
Lights out.
Right, so you get him. Like Tim Duncan, you didn't have to change what you were doing to watch Tim
No,
Duncan.
you knew
right?
he
It's
was
not-
great.
Yeah.
You knew he was great, but
Yeah.
like he always turned out to be, it wasn't must-watch TV.
Yeah.
The explosiveness, for me, it's a few things. It's the explosiveness, but then it's like the decision-making, too. At his age, he doesn't take dumb shots.
No.
Everything's thought out. He's going to shoot 70% for a reason.
Yeah, but part of the thing on that's interesting is he's not going to take dumb shots, but his boy does.
I know.
Right? RJ takes all the dumb shots. And what I saw in that Carolina game about Zion, where I was like, oh, okay, something went off. That Syracuse game where he killed it, he went like 13 for 13. He took 11 shots in the first half against Carolina as if he came in and realized, oh, wait a minute. So I'm going to have to take a bunch of shots in order for us to win this, and I can't let my boy shoot us out of the game. Cool, give me that. And that's the switch, because I don't think he realized he was the best dude on the team for real.
And that they are only, to me, the number 1 overall seed in the tournament when he's playing and taking over.
Oh, yeah, they're not going to win the tournament with him either.
I don't think so either. It's funny. As much as I love him, I'm surprised that they made them the number 1 overall seed. To me, they seem fallible. They almost lost Friday night when he was unstoppable.
Yeah, they can't shoot. I mean, in the end, you're not. If you are,
can't shoot free throws.
You're 300 in the country at free throws.
But let me take you
and
somewhere
300
else.
in the other place.
On all those aspects, but isn't their defense phenomenal too, though?
Yes, their defense is
Duke's
great.
defense is phenomenal. Defense wins championships, guys.
Yeah, but you can't win 5 games against good teams if y'all can't shoot. Like
True.
it's going to be.
But you're saying they can't shoot.
I mean, they like as from outside.
They're mediocre.
No, they're bad.
They're
really
can't
on the
shoot.
worst end. Like, if you look at even Zion's scoring, he hits 1 to 2 3-pointers
right,
a game.
right.
Yeah.
Everything else is a layup.
Yeah,
That is what they do.
This is like that Kentucky team that had John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins on it, and they were the best team in the country. And it was just like, can they go through a whole tournament not being able to shoot? They lost to West Virginia, and they shot 8 for 32 from 3-point range. It was just the day that they couldn't make no shots, and that's what's going to happen to Duke.
So do you think that Duke is out when? They make it to what? Final Four, easy?
I'd say Sweet 16 at least. Then after that, it gets shaky. Like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but if I had to guess, it's probably because like we're in Virginia.
Who's the better team in the tournament?
I think Carolina's a better team.
Really?
I do.
I like Tennessee and Kentucky a lot.
Yeah, see, my thing with Tennessee is I grew up rooting for Texas, and you can bet on Rick Barnes if you want to. I've fallen for that trick numerous times, and I refuse to go back down that road. He ain't doing it to me again.
Were you of the school when Zion's shoe blew up that he should just sit down and that never crossed your mind?
Well, it crossed my mind, but I think people forget about basketball players. If he wasn't playing basketball out there, you know what he'd be doing? Playing basketball somewhere else. Like basketball players play basketball no matter what it is. The reason that the college part is offensive, it's not because he's playing for free. It's that he's playing for free and other people are getting paid. But if he wasn't out there playing for free, he'd be somewhere else playing for free.
Now, you, on the notes here, the producer put together, says you have a blueprint for paying college athletes.
I don't have a blueprint. I just have a sturdy belief in what's right. You know, because I think the trick that people play on you when talking about paying college athletes, they're like, okay, I'm cool with it, but
how do you do it?
How do you do it? Oh, well, if you can't figure out how, then we just can't do it. No,
Sounds like reparations. The same combo for reparations.
That's exactly what it is logically, is that you have to start, to me, with the idea of the moral imperative, right? Like, you have to start with the idea that this is what is right. And we're still swaying people on the idea that it is right. You can't get to the how are we going to do this.
That's what offended me about Bernie Sanders on The View.
Yeah.
Is the fact that he was like, but how do we do it? I'm like, bro, why don't you just say, I think it's a great idea. We need to do some work and figure this out. Your whole posture of like questioning that it's right even.
Yeah, well, that's the back door.
Offensive.
Well, here's the other part about paying athletes, and people got to be honest about this. What they fear is that if you have to pay athletes, then they're like, well, some of these schools will have to go out of business. So if y'all walk into work here one day and they're like, hey, and they stop paying y'all, and you're like, hey, man, we need checks. And they're like, we would, but if we have to pay y'all, then we gonna have to shut this thing down. Then shut it down. Like, if y'all can't afford to do this, then y'all don't need to be in the business of doing it. Like you're not going, oh, we'll have to get rid of women's basketball. Y'all going to have to figure that out. Like that.
Right. Some programs won't be, and then it's like, well, if you're going to pay the basketball players, you won't be able to pay the wrestling team. Well, people don't pay to watch wrestling. No, professional wrestling, yes, not college wrestling. So like, those are things you will have to figure out.
Yeah, and they do, well, and I recognize.
And by the way, welcome to the real world.
That's the thing.
If we're in college, it's time for you to start learning that if you're in something that doesn't generate revenue, you don't make money. So you know that major that you picked, that liberal arts shit that you're doing, and you're paying $50,000 a semester or whatever to do, it ain't worth a shit. You need to invest in something that may get you a career later on.
Or make it a club sport. Because the one thing that gets lost is all these sports that men's basketball and football are paying for, most of the kids that are playing those other sports, their parents are paid. Like, you go check out, the story about the admissions stuff that went on there. these are the sports where kids' parents are paying coaches
Crew,
500
lacrosse,
G's,
tennis,
to get them in school.
golf.
Like, they could have a bake sale or whatever, works for that level of people, and they could come up with that if
That's
they
a
wanted
really
to.
great
But
point.
the idea, we don't have, if we cut this off, then we won't have the money for the other stuff. So what you're telling me is you have to keep stealing from me because otherwise your lights are going to go out. Okay, cool. You got me. Keep taking my money. Nah, that's ridiculous.
Especially when you look in college football and basketball, how often the head coach of the major program is the highest paid employee of the state, making $10 million. And you're telling me there's no way to figure that out with the amount of money you're making every week at a college at Michigan?
Well, that's why, we've talked frequently about, putting pensions together.
Yeah.
Where it's not like you necessarily have to give these kids money now, but they're risking their bodies, their physical, sometimes, mental health, right, with CTE or whatever's going on, that maybe when they're 30, right, they have access to some money that's been put away. And it could almost be like a 401k where even the the person putting up the money, like the school can actually make money on their investment as well. The kid
There's
gets
a lot of
match
ways that you could make this work.
Exactly. There's tons of ways to make it
Well, the
work.
way I always put it is, it's amazing. These universities, from what I've heard, have huge collections of smart people who are really good at coming up with ideas.
Even
to solve
programs
difficult
like
problems.
economics,
Right. Like they act like we don't know who could do it. Yo, you're Stanford. You got somebody.
It's
out here.
academia. What?
I remember when I was growing up, there was a professor at Texas A&M who would come up with something, and I lie to you not, on turning lead to gold. Like, this was his project, learning how to turn lead to gold. You got a man that say he can figure out how to turn lead to gold, and you can't figure out how to pay people? It ain't that hard. It's not that complex.
But hold on though. The quarterback might have to make more money than the tight end.
Yeah, because that don't happen nowhere else.
Yeah, that's life.
That's
yeah,
real
right.
life.
Oh, the star play Zion Williamson would make more than the 8th player on the
As
team.
he should.
Yup, that's exactly what would happen.
People get mad socialists when this stuff comes around.
Until
and
it's
it
time to
happens.
get socialists and try to help.
By the way,
Yes.
or there are other ways to figure it out. By the way, you can also adapt a world in which players can get agents earlier and players can get sponsorships, and where Duke's deal with Nike is like we have a deal with Nike. However, if Zion Williamson had a deal with Adidas, he gets to wear Adidas and make money there. There's so many different ways you could do this and let players get paid.
Never forget, the research has shown that people who are opposed to paying players, it is a strong correlation with racial animus.
Isn't that crazy? Well, I know it's crazy. No, it's not crazy because everyone's racist. But
No, everyone's not racist. But we live in a society.
That's a lie.
No, we live in a society that was conditioned over century to be okay treating people who look a certain way differently than other people. That's like the psychology
so you're
of the
saying it's
nation.
a direct correlation to the fact
To
that black people
slavery.
were expected to do free labor.
Yes.
Yeah, kind
So, and is that what makes me always so inherently uncomfortable with Southern college football?
I can see it.
Yo,
The white coach with
I
the
was gonna
sheriffs
bring
walking
it.
next to
No,
him.
I was gonna bring it up. Yo, the Deep South, other than the state of Florida and Georgia, Tennessee, Deep South states don't have professional football.
Right.
Yeah. No, these are their teams, right?
These are their teams.
We don't pay anyone to play football.
But although,
We pay black people to entertain us? Absolutely not.
Although, to be fair, there are actually lines of people who are willing to break the law and go to jail in order to pay these boys to play. That's the part that gets me about we don't know how to pay people. You have people that are willing to endanger their livelihoods to come out here and pay big money. By the way, cats are getting 6 figures in some cases in order to go play. This thing that happened with LSU, the part that was interesting is they caught the coach on the phone with a top 40 recruit, which is pretty mid-tier in basketball. And I forget what the number was that I saw, but I'm like, damn, that's how much that dude gets to go there? No, you got people who, they want it. They love every day to wake up and go drop a bag off at somebody's house.
That's a really interesting point about it, too.
Yeah, no, it ain't that hard, man.
Yeah.
It's offensive. It's reached level of embarrassing and offensive when you really start to dig into the TV contract numbers before you get to ticket sales, jersey sales, sponsorship. I mean, there's just revenue falling out the sky.
And the fact that the so-called education that is being presented ostensibly as payment is not legit. You know, the idea, if they were actually getting a full-on for real college education, we'd be having.
Well, you mean the classes that they're taking and the things that they have to
and the schedule they could even keep it.
Right, the schedule and all those things. If there was a legitimate education tied in, then I might be willing to listen to you on the idea that they are getting this back in value. But that's not what's happening, man. When I was at Carolina, I was a TA in economics, and I remember that somebody asked the question in our orientation. It was like, So what's going to happen? Like you're nervous about what happens if you get an athlete and you got some grade problems or whatever. And they looked at us and were very clear. It was like, you're probably not going to get any athletes in this class.
Right.
And we got one, and he failed. Right? Like, we literally got one. Because they ain't putting you in no damn economics class. Like, you got practice. What are you talking about? This class is
We
hard.
got money to go make. We got tickets to sell.
Right.
We got TV contracts to secure.
Coach making $5 million a year. That's the other part, too. Once everybody else's money got so big, it became, like, far more offensive that you weren't paying the players. And the coach is making, like a $1985, $100,000 a year. Then you not paying the players doesn't seem so bad.
And the recruits are coming from cities and communities that they just trying to get out of a lot of times.
Yes.
Like how many of these players are just coming from places where it's like, get me out of here. Nobody in my family's been to college. I just need to go and I need to play and I got to get to this contract.
I just find it fascinating that when you bring these up, and Bomani, you and I can both appreciate this, that, we talk often about how different the conversations we have and the audience I have on Hot 97 is different than the audience that hears me on ESPN.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You know that very well.
Oh, yeah.
There are these topics that down the line feel like racial. No matter if you take a side,
they are, bro.
And they come for the same people that come for you. When I used to tweet about things like that, would come for me. And the callers all.
Yeah.
I'm not even political on the air, and they can all hear by the place I fall on these issues in sports. Who you are. It's crazy. So that's why I guess that was my reaction when you brought up that we go down these lines on issues. It's just so disappointing, I guess, that like it's surprising when you be like, why would college athletes not want to get paid? And it seems as if such a high percentage of the white audience is like, no, absolutely not. They shouldn't get paid.
And Rosenberg is still hopeful, though. That's one thing you got to give to Rosenberg. Every day he still wakes up in his mind and in his circle and in his life because of your parents, shout to your parents, and the world you grew up in. You're hopeful that it is not racial still all the time, even though time and 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 time again, it always goes back to the fact that it's racial.
I just assume that at some point things would change. Like I just assume that we will
generationally,
progress.
but they're still.
But I guess I didn't realize what I thought when I was born. I was born at a time when I would live to like easily see it, and then Barack Obama becomes president. I'm like, oh yeah, boom, we're on the path. I'm good money. And then I was like, oh wait, no, you want Kaepernick? The conversations we're having right now. Then these are just basic subjects. Friggin' my parents, they've been on the rampage this week because they went to Hudson Yards. So that's and you find out that the low income housing that they have there is the biggest lottery in the history of New York City. If you do get it, well, they have a separate entrance for you.
Yeah.
Oh, they got a porridor.
They got a porridor. So I was like, and I was like, damn, they already finished the subway stop there? That's done? What happened to the Second Avenue subway? How was that? They already got that done?
Yeah.
Just so you can go to the Coach and Chanel store?
Yep. But I tell you, my moment was Katrina. Like, I'm still somewhat optimistic, but Katrina for me was where I was like, oh, this is what it is, right? Because it was so stark and so glaring, the idea that you could see what you were seeing on television and that people could check out just that easily on that sort of thing and have the things that they had to say about it. That's when I was like, oh, man, this is bad. But see, the reason, though, my optimism has waned to a degree is I don't think – people got to have a certain measure of honesty about what is actually happening. And I think that a lot of people got to a point where as long as we keep patting people on the back for letting black people vote, like, realize how minor and minimal that is? Like, that's the major, like, what's the big thing that black people have managed, to accomplish in the civil rights struggle? We ended Jim Crow. Yo, that's really small and basic, right? Once you start talking to people about doing things beyond that.
And did we end Jim Crow? Different conversation. But
we might change his name, right? But it got to a place where it's like, okay, now that we're here, okay, well, now let's keep going. They're like, whoa, keep going. Y'all can vote. I don't understand what the big deal is. And so all this stuff works on autopilot in a way that you never have any one person to individually blame. And then once you don't have one person to individually blame, everybody's just coasting. And then that's how you get to that, well, yeah, I do that, but, we can't think of how it is that we're going to do it and da-da-da. Very few people are willing to go so far as to lose something in the name of right.
Or make their own reality uncomfortable.
Yes.
As we challenge status quo to try to move to, because that's the other part. How uncomfortable does it get when people have to accept that white privilege and, racism is a part of the fabric of our institutions.
Yeah.
I don't get why it's so uncomfortable.
Oh, it's all good till you got something to lose. And
it's just like Kaepernick taking a knee. He harmed nobody. He was pointing out that police were killing black men on video, on the news. It's on the news, guys. It's happening a lot. And no one's being held accountable. And it's happening too often. I'm going to take a knee in respect and bring for the national anthem and bring attention to something that we're seeing on the news. Just because I want you guys to all pay attention that an adopted half-black kid who grew up with privilege. This is Colin Kaepernick. This isn't the America that my white parents told me it was supposed to be. And as a black man who's adopted into a white family, it's making me feel some type of way, and I want to bring attention to it. The world came unglued.
For the sheer audacity of doing it, right?
Unglued that a quarterback on a national football team.
Well,
because remember, Marshawn Lynch had taken a...
Marshawn Lynch just takes a seat.
He just sits down. Straight disrespect. Nobody says anything.
No one said a word.
That is the most underrated point of this whole thing, is that the guys who basically were just like, dog, I don't care.
Michael Bennett.
And don't answer no questions about it. They're the ones who got off okay. Kaepernick put the words to it. And once the words came, that's when the wheels came off.
Yeah.
And then his afro, you're going to wear an afro and be a quarterback?
And a quarterback, you need to respect the position.
And a beard, you got to respect the opportunity.
We're already uncomfortable. Listen, white America's already uncomfortable with a black man playing quarterback. And then you remember that the first black man to win a Super Bowl was Doug Williams in 1987. Like, it happened not that long ago. So, I know. You're right, it is. It's just upsetting.
No, I know. You're just optimistic. And
I
it's
don't
a
even know if
blessing,
I'm
man.
optimistic. You give me too much credit. I'm just stupid.
You're hopeful.
I
want to believe you're hopeful, not stupid, man. I work with you every day.
Appreciate you.
But I still feel like there's some minds that can be changed. I don't necessarily know the best way to do it at this point, but through all the years of
I'll
me
tell you
doing,
it's not. You and Ebro on Twitter.
Yeah, no, they haven't.
It ain't gonna happen. That is you not changing them.
But
It's
you know
just
what
fighting.
though? But you know what though? It used to. Like, I have people who would really send me really thoughtful emails about how stridently they disagree with me on certain things, and then came back and realized, I really stopped and thought about this, and I got to say, no, you were right. Like, this, it was not.
But it changed. So there was a time when it wasn't completely flush with just nasty. There was
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Like, I'd say, like, around like 2016 was the game change, man. Everything flipped in 2016. But before that, there were people who would show
What
me.
happened that year?
What happened that year? It was a weird year. Who won the championship that year?
Everything, dude. That's our 1968, right? Like, that's our year that we're gonna look like. As it happens, this is a watershed moment in American history. But I really did feel like I had a lot of people who would come up to me and just be like, "Hey, man, I don't agree with everything you say, that type of stuff." But then they come in and they'd be like, "Nah, the more I thought about this, like I remember this was like 2009, and there was some Confederate flag controversy going on. I think it was like ACC baseball tournament or something like that, and." Everybody's got their rationalizations about why the Confederate flag is okay to them. And I grew up in Texas and went to school in a small town. Like, I'm kind of numb to it because I'm just used to, like, my next door neighbor had a Confederate flag on his truck and would say hello and be as nice as he could every time I saw him. Like,
I watched Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't think he gave it any thought as to what it was. But I remember I was on the radio and I was like, all right, we're going to talk about this flag. And I know that this is a polarizing sort of issue, but I'm just going to lay this out for you. And I'm going to ask you that if your argument is that you want to show respect for your Southern heritage, I'm like, cool, I'm with that. So why don't you come up with something that, like, I can share with you, right? If this is about being from the South, I'm from the South, right? So why are you picking a symbol that excludes me unless the idea is for the exclusion? So if we're all going to be Southern, let's be Southern together. And, so why don't you want to have a Southern symbol that fits us all? And I remember I got done with the segment, and I sat for 5 minutes, and we looked at the phone. Didn't ring a single time. And I could get people to call up and be mad at any moment. Didn't ring a single time because they were just like, wow, you know what? Hadn't quite thought of that. And they didn't have anything.
By the way, for the record, ladies and gentlemen, that's why you want to subscribe The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I mean, honestly, you put things together in a way that's tough to argue. That is very tough.
It's very thoughtful of you.
I appreciate it. But to be honest, they would listen. Like, I really felt like I had built up a trust with the people, and they would call in, and they'd be like, "Yo, you know what? I really hadn't thought about it like that." Those things can still happen. I just don't know what the space is for it anymore because all our media stuff is so polarized at this point, where everybody can go get the exact kind of news they want. Everybody can go get the exact perspective that they want to hear to reinforce whatever they say. Nobody is actually forced to hear an opinion that might differ from their own.
See, you're hopeful. I knew you weren't straight pessimist. This is hopeful talk I'm hearing from you.
I got no
because see, me, I'm not even interested in converting people at all. If you are not if you're just on that side, I'll just call it that side because I'm being lazy right now.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm not interested in having a conversation with you about these things that if you're a grown adult in this country and you're over 28 years old, I'll even give you that, and you're still thinking that the Confederate flag is okay and not offensive to other groups, you're only thinking about yourself, you haven't really bought into the idea that America invited people from all walks of life and races and colors here to, live out their dreams and whatever, and you haven't accepted the fact that that comes with other religions and cultures, and you're not willing to put aside your heritage, things about your heritage that are offensive to other groups. You're not willing to do that to embrace people coming here. I don't have time for you.
I don't blame anybody who reaches that point. And I think with certain individuals, like I can get to a place of reaching that point. But the one thing I say, like, did you grow up around white people?
Yeah, my mom's white.
Okay. And so for me, perspective-wise, I feel like I grew up around enough white people to know the people who think that they're on the side of right, but they really aren't, but there's nobody that ever actually like challenges them on what it is that they think. So again, they're like, hey man, I think black people should vote. And they think that this is the standard. And to be fair to them, they live in a society that reinforces the idea that this bare minimum stuff is okay. I do believe that there are still people out here. I'm not worried about changing like the minds of the most strident people. But I'm worried about the people who are kind of in the middle on this and don't realize exactly what the nonsense is that they're saying.
And I'm with that too.
Yeah, and that's what Ebro I think you overstated when you're annoyed. Yeah. But we're not trying to have Tommy Loren come up so we can have a conversation.
No.
But there are people who may watch her who actually and watch other things.
Right.
Who are like, yeah, like you said, I actually voted for Barack Obama. And then I voted for Trump because I thought things were going to be different. And I don't love everything, but I don't. Yeah. And I think there are some people there in which that are there to grab.
Yeah. And I cut them some slack also because I know my own personal journey on matters of gender, for example, or matters of sexual orientation and things like that.
You mean where you weren't born progressive?
Yeah. Or even if I wouldn't say that I was unprogressive, but I would say I had a lot of blind spots that I didn't realize that I had.
Because it didn't affect your life and you weren't thinking about it.
Right. And there was nobody around to give any challenge on that sort of stuff. And so I am inclined to cut some measure of slack on understanding. But once you decide that you are just kind of the enemy on this, then I'm not going to rock with you. But I don't think that people realize till the rubber meets the road is all fun and games, so you got to lose something. And in order for any of these things to change, people have to be willing to lose things. It hurts my heart every time I see the way that a lot of men have reacted to the Me Too movement and stuff like that.
Man.
Where it's just yo, man, you are going to have to lose what you believe is your right to talk to and put your hands on this woman any way you want to. You ain't really giving up that much here, right? But the second somebody got something that they got to lose, now they went, oh, hold on now, I think this might be going a little bit too far. Dude, what are you talking about? But people do that same stuff on race. It's they're with it, and then you might have, that's the problem with reparations. They're oh, wait a minute, am I going to have to pay for this? Right? Any of these issues that come down to government assistance to people, somebody once said, man, if white people find out black people getting air for free, all of a sudden they're going to have a meter, inside your house for this air that you're building. Once it costs somebody something. Right? Now people have a problem.
Well, and also you have a lot of progressives who are they really liberal, really liberal, really liberal. They move to a neighborhood, they gentrify a neighborhood, but they want to be part of the community. They're accepting, blah, blah, blah. All right, now we got to pick schools. Okay, we got to get our kid to a private school. We got to get our kid to a charter school. They're not going to go to this school.
Yep.
Because now it's about my child. Yeah. And now I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but then that becomes a tricky situation on that front because it ain't you don't get where they're coming from.
Well,
most of the people who are sending those kids to those schools that they don't want to send their kids to don't want to send their kids to those schools either.
They just don't have the option.
They don't wind up with the options. None of this is simple in these ways. And so I do, if I can, respect the humanity of the people that are around. But I get a certain frustration with this is still a crazy segregated, everything. I was looking at a map in New York the other day because I live in Harlem. And I was thinking about, hey, man, I might want to go to a different part of town, except I want to live around black people. And basically, if I'm going to live in Manhattan and I want to live around black people, I got to live in Harlem and move into one of y'all's houses or something because that's literally the only option that I have.
I know this sounds crazy, but I really realized after I'd bought my place, don't think about it, I lived in my apartment for a year. And I was like, I don't know if any black people live in my building. No, honestly, I really, and I'm like, do I go to a board meeting? And I've never been to a board meeting. Mm-hmm. Do I go to a board meeting and be like, do y'all have any black people in this building? I live on the Upper West Side.
Yeah,
and I did not realize the level of segregation that you're talking about.
Yes. And what's crazy is I live in Harlem and there's a couple of black people who live in my building.
2.
But not that many.
It's not like it's Harlem. Like
I got
what you
news
said.
for you.
Don't get me wrong. The 7-Eleven, we out there, right? But the streets, we out there. The Fruit Man, all that.
Oh yeah, that's the same on the Upper West Side too.
Yeah, then I go in the door.
Right.
And then, I just realized, I looked around and was like, yo, man, there really aren't, of course, they trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing there, right? Like, especially the first 7 months I lived there and I wasn't working. I'm just around all the time in sweats,
Big sweatpant guy, by the way. Bomani Jones, one of the biggest sweatpant guy in the business.
If
he ain't on TV,
sweatpants.
sweatshirt.
Absolutely.
Facts.
Yo, Bomani, it's been a great conversation with you, bro.
No, man,
When can we have you
it.
back? Now you live in New York.
Dude, I'm around, man. We can figure this out.
Because we still got to, at some point, get back to the Knicks. We didn't talk Knicks.
Oh, no, yeah, we can.
Another day. Let's
Yeah, we can. No,
let's not open that can.
Let's say
right
y'all
now.
all
Giants, Jets?
Not now.
Giants?
The Giants are hilarious.
We gotta wrap up, Ebro. I'm not talking Dave Gettleman right now.
I thought you were a Jets guy. You're a Giants guy.
No, I'm a Redskins guy. Remember? Come
No,
on,
that's
man.
right. That's right. My
What
bad.
What did
IBM
Gettleman do? I'm just kidding.
Bomani, The Right Time, and High Noon. Go check out all this stuff. Thank you, Bomani.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.